Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Odin's movie vlog. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well. And today, yeah, it's been a while. I was so used to daily uploading, and recently I have been taking a couple of days off in between videos, just because there's been a lot of things going on here at home, and also, of course, because there's just hasn't been that much stories or many stories that I really felt like covering in video format. But today I actually was lucky enough this morning to go watch a movie on Netflix. It's still available on Netflix from 2016 called Train to Busan. I'm hopefully pronouncing that correctly. And it is a zombie horror thriller movie that takes place mostly on a train. And it probably is not only one of the best films that I have seen recently. Not only is it one of probably the best films that I've seen in the last 5 or 10 years, it's by far the best zombie film that I have ever seen in my entire life. And that is saying a lot, or rather really not a whole lot, is to be perfectly honest, because I'm really not someone that is often drawn to the zombie genre, the zombie horror genre especially, but this film just hits so many right notes because it's not just a typical zombie horror film, even though it definitely has some of those tropes, right? It has obviously the zombies, it has the gore elements of a typical zombie film, but then it also has a lot of really great writing in it as well, including several really awesome character arcs that are just freaking fantastic. But before I get into more of my thoughts on Train to Busan, what is really exciting, and the reason why I wanted to make a video, was not just because I thought that film was fantastic, but also because its sequel, so obviously it came out in 2016, so it's been about 4 years since the original came out, has actually just opened overseas, obviously starting in Korea. It is a film out of South Korea. And it has made around $4 million or so overseas through Thursday, not only by adding in what it's made so far in Korea, but also in other parts of the region where it's opened as well. This sequel is actually expected to open here in North America around August 7th, though, of course, I wouldn't hold my breath on that one because we just living in such a weird, crazy world right now where so many theaters have been shut down across the entire world. And even though China is expected to open up some of its own theaters in lower risk areas in its country, here in the United States, we seem to be going backwards. So it's really hard to say whether or not we'll have any major new releases this year, let alone in the next month or two. But Peninsula, the sequel to Train to Busan, for anyone that was a fan of it, has indeed been released overseas, is expected to be here in the United States at least sometime, and rather in North America, sometime within the next month, but we'll have to wait on that. But it's doing very well, and that makes me very happy. Even though when you look at the numbers, it's not doing nearly as well, obviously, in Korea right now, because that just makes a lot of sense, because nothing is doing well in the box office, because so many theaters are still closed, so many regulations have been putting limits on theaters that are allowed to be open in the first place, and so, again, it just makes a lot of sense. But let's go ahead and just dive into this news story real quick. Peninsula, Yan Sang-ho, hopefully I'm saying that correctly, follow-up to his 2016 zombie smash Train to Busan, is off to a thrilling start at the national box office, where it kicked off in 3 markets beginning yesterday. In the home hub of Korea, Peninsula had a Wednesday take of $2.4 million on 2,338 screens. That's a really great number for me to hear, because, again, that means that there's a crap ton of theaters available and open now in South Korea, which is great to hear. To log the biggest opening score of the year so far, which that, of course, is not saying much because theaters have been closed for most of the year. It sold 353,000 tickets in day one, more than the entire number of admissions for all titles from the previous frame, which again is not that much of a surprise. But what I do like is that in Korea and in other markets, they keep track of actual tickets sold, and that would be something I would love to see here in the American marketplace, because even though we can compare box office numbers, etc., it would be much more interesting to me, instead of adjusting the numbers for inflation, to actually look at how many actual tickets were sold for every film, because I think that would give us a much better insight into what the film actually did as far as like a fan base goes, return visits, and just how successful the film was overall, because the price of a ticket obviously can change and flux throughout time, throughout history. But the ticket itself, the person per ticket that you always get whenever you go to a movie, that is something that has not changed. And that is something that probably will never change. And so it's something that I think would be a much better metric to really, obviously frame these things by. But that all being said, pretty cool to see that we're getting, hundreds of thousands of people going to see this on day one in Korea, or at least at the very least in this region. Through today, based on Kobit's estimates, Peninsula has clocked 4 million in the market so far. Next Entertainment World has Korean distribution. These numbers are naturally lower than 2016 Train to Busan, because obviously the world was very different back then. It says here that the Korean box office this past weekend was down 87% from last year, which again, no surprise there when everything has been shut down for the most part for most of this year so far. Still, great to see, again, thousands of people, thousands of tickets, millions of dollars being brought in for this film. And again, sequel to a fantastic movie that I'll talk about a little more in a second. But the other places where it's opened up are in Taiwan, where theaters were never ordered to close during the pandemic. Peninsula's 800,000 Wednesday bow was better than Train to Busan per international sales agents. In Singapore, a 106,000 Wednesday debut via Clover Film gave Peninsula the highest launch of a Korean title ever in the market. So obviously you see there's a lot of hunger out there for movies in various markets across the world, and obviously for films that are sequels to very successful ones at that. In each of the three markets, Peninsula is a clear number one and should see a strong play through the session. The film has an early Naver audience score of 8.39 and a 6.14 from Korean critics. These are also below Train to Busan's 8.59 and 7.1, though with fewer people actually polled. And also, I really think that sequels oftentimes are always at a disadvantage because their goal is they have to live up to the expectations of the original film, and then in many cases has to surpass them, because if it just is the original film just with new characters or in a new setting, then it really has no originality to it, and so it always gets held to a higher standard regardless. But I have not seen Peninsula yet. I have seen Train to Busan, and as I said, this movie has everything going for it that it possibly could. It's got an amazing cast, including this little girl that you see on screen. She gives probably one of the best performances in the movie. And you all know that sometimes child performances can be absolute cringe. But this little girl, who, again, I don't know how old she's got to be, single digits, is an amazing performer. Like, seriously, there's moments where she's just crying and losing it, and you believe every second that she's actually feeling these emotions. So it's something that, again, someone so young is able to do versus so many people in Hollywood that can't even, make you think for a second that they're actually embracing the characters that they're in. It's amazing to see what can happen in a lower budget film that most people probably still at this point haven't really heard of, even though it's been out for 4 years. And dear Lord, seriously, the performances alone should be enough for anyone to go see this film. But even more so, the characters in this movie are all wonderful and fantastic. So the little girl's father is someone that plays basically a trader, basically like someone that's essentially an investor, right? And deals with shares, etc. And so he starts off being a very self-centered guy, right? Where he only cares about himself, he only cares about his daughter, but you also question, like, does he really care about his daughter in the situation he's thrown into the zombie apocalypse? Or is it that he just wants to take care of himself? And then over the film, she also has some really great lines where she kind of calls him out saying, oh, you only care about yourself and this and that. And it just makes him obviously not only question that and also have to hear that from his little tiny daughter, but also it kind of shows a motivation for his character throughout the movie to grow and to become a better person. So you get to see him become a better person. There's other characters too, where they get to grow over the course of the film. Again, people that start off as enemies become friends and put, risk their lives for one another. And then, of course, what I love about the movie even more so, though, is that it also has the opposite side. It also has people that are complete crapheads, right? They actually are awesome. It's awesome because they've got people who, it's realistic during a zombie apocalypse, that would probably not put themselves out on the line for anyone else, that would only care about themselves, that would be willing to essentially ignore and send people that they think could be infected, right? Even though there's no obvious evidence of it, for their own protection and not actually want to help anyone. So you got those characters too, and they go through very different arcs, right? Instead of it going from, oh, I'm going to change over the course of the film, you see that some people never change. That no matter the circumstances of anything going on in the world, that there are some people that if they're an asshat now, they're always going to be an asshat. Where it also shows the opposite, that there's sometimes people that can start off one way, but then grow over the course of a story, of a life, of a film even, and become so much better. So it's not just your typical zombie apocalypse film, though it definitely has those moments, again, as I mentioned previously and mentioned earlier, where you have the zombie violence in it, with the biting of the neck and things like that, some blood spurting out. But what I think is the most impressive about the whole zombie sequences are the number of amazing stuntmen and women that worked on this movie, because seriously, the stunt work done with how they're able to contort their bodies to show the difference between when they're alive and when they're a zombie is amazing. There's an amazing GIF that I posted on the Twitter, my Instant Thoughts Twitter review, and basically it's this one guy who's able to basically disjoint and put an arm across, behind his head, running at somebody. And it's just that thought of, oh my gosh, either he thought about doing that or someone else said, hey, this is what I want you to do. Hey, you have the capacity to do this. This could be a really interesting and cool shot. Instead of it just being a zombie running, now it's a zombie that has bones being, again, disjointed somehow. And obviously the guy, the actor must be double jointed. But again, the fact that we're seeing that on the screen and it's not just the typical zombie fare, it's just amazing. And again, it was such a refreshing movie, not only because it is taking place in a zombie apocalypse, but it's a good movie first that happens to be taking place during a zombie apocalypse. And so if you're someone that you're like, I don't like zombie films or horror films in general, but you like good movies with good acting, I would really recommend this movie for that reason alone, because it's got it checks off all of those boxes. Great writing, great direction, great acting, great characters, right? Great pacing as well. Again, 2-hour film, and yet you always just feel like you're on the edge of your seat, right? It starts off slow in the beginning, but then it just slowly, like a train, almost builds up over time, and then eventually when it's going, and it's just really fantastic. And so when I found out that there was a sequel, obviously I think that's awesome. And what I like about it is that based on the original premise that I've been reading about for the sequel, because I really don't want to know a whole lot, is that it takes place in the same world, but it is not the same characters, right? It's not going to be following the story of the characters that are left. Again, I'm not going to spoil it, but the characters that are left alive by the end of the movie, because obviously you know that there can be some characters that are going to live and some characters that are going to die. And for some of them, I mean, the arcs that their characters go on to reach that point, as I said, it just, again, I can't say this enough. So Song Ho-yeon, again, hopefully I'm saying that somewhat right, but he directed the film, was a co-writer on it with Joo Suk Park. So you guys freaking rock. I hope that y'all are also doing the sequel as well. And it'd be really cool to see a connection to the previous film. And if the previous film's characters can come back in some way, right? I think it's about 4 years. So it's interesting because, this film came out in 2016 and the film takes place 4 years after the original. So it kind of takes place in kind of like a real time, modern timeline in that way. It'd be really cool to see the young actress come back 4 years later and to see, if she's changed at all. Obviously, she would still be very young. She would be a young teenager at that point, but it'd be really cool to kind of see, has she grown at all? Has she been impacted by the events, having to go through a zombie apocalypse in the first film, right? It'd be really cool to see all of that stuff happen. But anyway, if I had to give a grade to the movie, I would give the film an A+. And I don't give that grade out very often. Y'all know that I'm the critic that's a cynic. I'm usually very cynical when it comes to movies overall. But if you don't mind, this is, of course, a foreign language film as well. Some people don't have time for that, right? They don't like reading subtitles. Because so much of the film is actually centered on action instead of the actual dialogue itself, I don't think it's a very difficult film to follow. I saw another film today that was a foreign language movie that I found, again, it was like a headache because there was so much dialogue that I had to follow as I was trying to watch the movie. This one, I did not have that same experience with because there's so much action happening that you're able to kind of just experience the craziness of what's going on and be able to enjoy the performances without missing any of the context of the conversation of what's going on throughout the film. So as I said, it's a fantastic film. I highly recommend it. It's still available on Netflix as of now, and so I would definitely recommend it, especially not only if you're an action horror thriller fan, but even if you're not and you just want to see a good movie not right now in 2020 because nothing is coming out, I would say it's one that you should put on the top of your list, and you can watch it in time for, if you like it, the sequel to come out. And again, glad to see some box office numbers finally coming in if we're a film to be making some millions of dollars. So anyway, what are your thoughts about this? Are you excited for Peninsula? Are you planning on seeing this movie when it comes to the States or wherever you are in the world? Or are you not going to get excited because you're afraid that it's going to get postponed and Again, I think that's just the nature of the beast right now. And also, if you have seen Train to Busan, let me know your thoughts about it as well. Are you as hyped about this film as I am? Because I think it's just freaking amazing, right? I mean, as good as a zombie apocalypse film on a train can be, this not only meets those expectations, it also far surpasses them because of the writing prowess of the writers. And also, of course, the acting as well. So let me know your thoughts about this and everything I talked about in the comment section below. If you like this video, smash that like button, hit that subscribe. It helps out a lot. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Have a wonderful day. And as always, God bless. And now a huge shout out to all of my Patreon members. Albertus Magnus, Animation Commentator, Brian P., David Bobrizik, Dion, DivX, Enrique Evangelista, Father Christopher Miller, hail to you, Father, Frank the Tank and the Shawhan Wiener Dog Clan, Harold Francis, the Honker Chonker Funky Monkey, Inflamed Wood, Intertrap Productions, Jason Clark, Jacob Juice, Jeffrey Toon, Jonathan Carney, Kenneth Camille, Lady T, Laura Story, who is the modern Major General, Mad Mitch Dunaway, Mike Jackson, Mr. Peabody and his evil twin with the beautiful hair, Orange at Reviews, Outpost Dyer, Out of Step with Reality, Riff Magos, Rosetta Ellen, Steve Glasker, Teresa Martin, Theodore Benton, Tina Bojan, The DJD Show, and Tina B. Thank you all for being my Patreon members, and a huge shout out to my Subscribe Star members, Stand For, John B., Perpetual Punster, Robert Revo, Mr. Roy, Glinzer, G2 Cool 99, Darkstar 57, Alex McCarthy, or J. Alex McCarthy Jr., US 888209 Fast, Dean Heiss, Harold Francis, J. Rod the Beer Guru, Nevedon G. Adams, and ZK Man, and Father Damian Cook. Thank you all so very much for being my Patreon and Subscribe Star members. Seriously, you are the wind beneath my wings. You help keep the lights on. You help support things like the giveaways for my $5 and up backers, and also allow me to do a lot of the extra stuff for the channel, including the exclusive OMB podcast that I do every couple of weeks with John, the Flick Pick of the Flick Pick channel. And yeah, thank you so much for your support. Don't want to really drag it out too long this month. You guys are amazing and beautiful people. If you want to have a name shout out, if you want to have access to giveaways, podcasts, any of that kind of stuff, check the links in the description for Patreon and Subscribe Star. You guys rock. Have a wonderful day. And as always, God bless.